The obligation to testify when you have knowledge. If you know something, you have to testify. There's no such thing in Torah as not getting involved except in monetary law. In monetary law, then you are only obligated to testify if you have been summoned. So for example, if it comes to somebody worshipped idols, you can't say, well, that's his business. If he wants to worship idols, that's up to him. If you and somebody else...
women aren't valid witnesses.
Women aren't valid witnesses, but if a woman can't, now, there are going to be certain times where the Beis Din is able to take certain precautions if it's let's say, a capital offense. But in general, let's say two witnesses have seen a guy worship idols. Then they have an obligation to go to Beis Din and tell the Beis Din that he's worshipped idols. If it's monetary law, I can't come to Beis Din and say, well, he owes him $150, and maybe he doesn't want to press charges. That's a man-to-man violation. Then you have to wait until the person who has been wronged initiates some sort of charge in Beis Din. But on an issue that involves man to God, it could be idol worshiping, or I saw the guy eating non-kosher food, you have to go to Beis Din because we have to maintain it. People wonder, it creates a big brother is watching society. It's not quite a big brother is watching society. It's a society where every Jew is responsible for other Jews. Now, we're not talking about creating a frum patrol, like in Baal Tshuva's yeshivas, where there's always somebody to tell you what you're doing wrong. We're not talking about that. We're talking about where you happen to see it. If you see it, you happen to have you don't have to go around, let's look for sinners. You don't have but if you happen to see it, if you happen to see somebody doing something wrong, the idea of a skirt. Let me ask you a question. Imagine you're walking by a park. There's a local park in your neighborhood. You live in a frum neighborhood. You live in Bnei Brak. You live in Har Nof. There's a park, and a bunch of frum little kids are playing in the park. There's a guy sitting on the park benches giving non-kosher canned toffees to the kids. What would you do?
Take all his candy off him.
Buy his candies off him. You'd buy his candies off him?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Oh, you'd buy it.
Leave and buy his candy.
And what if he said, mind your own business?
That's different. I would not know what to do properly.
You're to be ejecting from the park.
Okay, you would certainly feel that something needs to be done.
Yeah, for sure. That's
okay.
Bad.
Okay. Now, what if a woman walks by in a short skirt and she's feeding non-kosher vision to people?
You look like this kind of.
Oh, 1 second. You understand that? You understand it's a problem. It's a problem because some people say, well, that's her business. It's not her business. It's not her business. She's bringing it. She's making it everybody else's business. So you understand that line of I'm only doing my thing. We all agree that argument of I'm not affecting you. I'm only doing my thing. Well, there's a limit to that. Yeah, I have the right to dress any way I want. Good, so I have the right to say anything that I want. I have the right to spray whipped cream on you if I want. Everybody. Where do those rights end? Because you haven't done anything actively to me, but you're walking around. We all agree that if you walk around with no clothing at all, then we have a right to. So where's that? Those lines are very, very unclear exactly where those lines are. I don't say going spray. Don't misquote me. I don't mean go around spraying whipped cream on women. There were guys who did that, by the way. There were guys who were spraying either whipped cream or some sort of foam on something on women who were unsneezed. They were spraying stuff on them. Why men are looking at them to spray them is a different question. You leave the spray squad should be other women. Well, whatever it is, the spray squad. All I'm telling you is that there's no such thing as, well, I'm doing my thing. We all agree. The idea of snitching on your fellow Jew is if nothing could be done about it. Then you're absolutely correct. So if one witness sees a Jew doing something wrong, you cannot come to Beis Din and testify. I forgot the case of the Gemara where a guy comes to Beis Din and he testifies that he was by himself. And in order to punish somebody in non-monetary law, in either capital or corporal cases, you need two witnesses. So one witness, there's a case of the Gemara where one witness came to Beis Din and testified that somebody had done something wrong. And then Beis Din gave lashes to the witness because you were wrong for testifying. You knew nothing could happen if you're all by yourself, so nothing could happen. There's no good, so your testimony constitutes Lashon Hara. And the guy said, what, he sinned and I'm supposed to get whipped? Right? The snitcher got it. That's what's called snitching. If something could be done practically, that's what the Torah is talking about over here, is where you have an obligation to get involved. Now, the same thing when you say, what if you take your rabbi in confidence? I would say, the problem is like this. You go to your rabbi in confidence, and I say, look, can I take you in confidence? Yeah. Okay, I plan on murdering someone tomorrow. All right, so you would agree with me that there are times where you have to break the confidence. Okay. So the line in halacha would probably be, if it is a man to God situation, then the rabbi is not allowed to break confidence. If it is something that's going to involve me harming other people, then the rabbi has to, then there's good, right. You got to take me in confidence. Now, I've had guys in other yeshiv, like more in the other yeshiv, where a guy says, can I tell you something in full confidence? The answer is no. The answer is no. Yeah, you could take me and I will give you my word that if I could keep it confidential, I will. But I can't tell you that I will keep it in full confidence, because if you tell me that you are planning on pushing drugs in the yeshiva, I won't keep that in confidence. So, you can't get me to commit myself. You can't get me to go. Somebody once came to the stipler for a bracha. He said, give me a bracha, I should be successful. So I said, how should I give you a bracha to be successful? For all I know, you're trying to rip somebody off in business, which the guy was. That was exactly what he was trying to do. So the disciple said, he could give me, I don't know where. So if a guy says to me, can I take you in confidence? If it's something that I can keep confidential, then I will keep confidential. But I cannot give you a judgment because I don't know what it is. Same thing medically. A doctor is not allowed to discuss his patients with other. Now, what if a guy comes to a doctor and he's got an absolutely contagious disease that hasn't been seen since bubonic plague? But the patient said, please keep it confident. So at a certain point, the doctor has to break. Has for the good of society. Yeah, go ahead.
The question is, should I tell him that, hey, your wife's cheating on you? I know without a shadow of a doubt.
You can't. A shadow of a doubt in halacha is when you witness the actual cheating. That's the shadow of a doubt. What you can say to a guy after consulting with a rabbinic authority is, I think you ought to check into and see if there's an issue over here between your wife, because you don't know beyond the shadow of a doubt. You think you know beyond the shadow of a doubt, but for all you know, the look that she gave the guy is because she, it could be something else. It could be they got a geschäft. It could be she's trying to get her husband jealous. It could be a million and one things. So you don't know beyond the shadow of a doubt in halacha means beyond the shadow of a doubt. Now the classic, I'm glad you brought that up, because the classic example is a case that took place in somewhere in Russia. We're going back about to the 17th century, where the Cossacks came through, and there was a Jewish guy there, and one of the Cossacks took this Jewish guy out to the forest to chop his head off. The Cossacks, that was their job satisfaction. So he took this Jewish guy to chop his head off, and somehow the Jew managed to beg his way out. And the Cossack said, look, I got a problem here, because if I just let you go, my friends are going to kill me, because we're Cossacks. We don't do stuff like that. He says, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to put your head on the chopping block. I will reverse my sword and chop your head with the other side of the sword, so it'll look like I chopped your head off. We're far enough away that they can't see. In the meantime, there were two Jewish witnesses, and the guy reversed the sword, and he chopped without killing the Jewish guy. In the meantime, these two Jewish witnesses went back to the town and reported that the man has been killed, because they saw from a distance. Cossacks were not known for their soft spot. So they saw from a distance that this guy had his head chopped off by a Cossack. They reported, and the rabbinic court ruled that his wife may remarry. Now, the guy then returned 6 months later. She happened to have not remarried. She did not remarry yet. But it's cited as a case where you see how important, how absolutely careful you have to be, that you must see what happened. Otherwise, if this woman would have remarried, then she'd have to leave. She can't live with him. She can't live with him. It becomes a major tragedy. So the rule here is that according to halacha, you have to do everything you can to behave responsibly as a witness, and you have to see it. There's no circumstantial evidence in Beis Din. You have to see the act. Beis Din wants to know that you saw the act, whether it's a murder, whether it's, remember we used the example of a guy running into a cave, and there was a no exit from the cave, and the second guy chases him in, and all we hear is, well, serves you right. No, please, boom. Right, and next thing you know, you come running in, and he's got a big knife sticking out of his chest, and the guy's standing over him, and he's saying, well, serves you right. And at the end of the day, you didn't witness a murder. All you witnessed was circumstantial evidence of a murder. It means that you have to actually see the actual act of whatever the crime is. That is what Beis Din is testing for. Nothing else will do, because like you say, you extended it to her look at him. And I know that look. Well, you wouldn't swear to that look, and you wouldn't bet all your money on that look. It's a decent bet, but you could be wrong. And since you could be wrong, then you cannot testify on that, because there's no end to circumstantial evidence. Well, there was a wallet on the table in here, and I saw Dave walk into the room yesterday. Yeah, but other people walked through. Yeah, but I saw Dave walk into the room. But other people walked in. Yeah, but I saw Dave walk in through. Does that prove it or doesn't prove it? You understand? So where's that line? The answer is that circumstantial evidence could be stretched, and therefore it can't be. It's got to be two witnesses say we saw the actual act of crime, the criminal activity. Otherwise, you cannot testify. That's the rule. Now, the other obligation here is, according to halacha, you have an obligation to get involved. Now, it's important to know the responsibility that a Jew has. In other words, Judaism is not just about living the halacha. There's a certain level of responsibility that a Jew has in all areas of life. So, for example, I'm going to give you 3 examples. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein was once consulted about an American pilot. As a Jewish guy who was in the American Army, in the American Air Force, and his plane disappeared somewhere in the deserts of Arizona. And where is it? Nevada, Arizona? I don't know, somewhere out in the deserts. His plane disappeared. There was a military plane disappeared. So they consulted Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. The family's rabbi consulted Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, and Rabbi Moshe Feinstein ruled that if there's no body, they don't know if the wife is an aguna. The wife cannot remarry. Okay? About 4 years later, the family gets a call from Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. I've been in constant contact with the United States military over the last 4 years. I just got word from them that they've located the plane. They found the bodies. The wife can now remarry. That's a responsibility of a Torah Jew. It's not just, okay, finished, and the game's over. A Torah Jew has a certain responsibility, and the responsibility carries into many other areas. Example number 2, Rabbi Shach. Rav Shach was once consulted by a kollel fellow. Guy came over to him. A yeshiva came to Rabbi Shach. They said, we need a rabbi to teach in the yeshiva. Do you think Reuven would be a good candidate to teach in the yeshiva? Rav Shach says, perfect, you couldn't do better than that. He's a Torah scholar, and he's good. He'd be a great guy. Okay. The next day, Reuven comes to Rav Shach, and he says to Rav Shach, I was offered a position in a yeshiva. Do you think I should take the position? Rav Shach says to him, no, I think you could do much better than that. I don't think you should take the position. So Reuven goes back to the yeshiva, and he says, well, I went to Rav Shach, he said not to take the position. So the Rosh Yeshiva, I don't understand, I spoke to Rav Shach the day before, he recommended you. So he said, I don't know, he told me not to. He said, one second, there's got to be a mix-up. So the two of them go to Rav Shach together. He said, Rav Shach, I understand, you told us, so Rav Shach said, look, you asked me if you should get him to be your Rebbe in the yeshiva. Yeah, if you could get him, excellent. You came to ask me if you should take the position. Had you not asked me, I wouldn't have said anything. You asked me, I give you the best advice. Your responsibility is to advise people the best advice you could possibly give them. Each person is an individual. They didn't come to you as a Jew. If they came to me as a group, I would say, do you think that this is a good match for all involved? I don't think you're going to get along with the yeshiva, and I don't think it's going to work out. That becomes my responsibility. But if you came to me as individuals, you asked me for advice. Yeah, I think it's a great. If LeBron comes to me and says, do you think I ought to go to Cleveland? I said, listen, I think you could do a lot better. If Cleveland comes to me and says, do you think we should try to get LeBron? It's the best thing you could possibly do for your team. Right? You understand? Your advice, my responsibility, you have to know what's your responsibility at any given moment. Where's your responsibility? I have responsibility to get involved. I have responsibility to do something. I'm responsible for all the other Jews. I can't just go put my head in the sand and pretend that it didn't exist. So you saw the testimony of an obligation to get involved. I'll tell you one last story. There was a guy. How much did he sign for, by the way? It was a lot, right? It was a bajillion, right? There was a yeshiva, and there was a guy in the yeshiva who in a regular yeshiva. So they have the mashgiach who sits by the base of medrash, and the mashgiach is the guy who watches to see when people are coming in, the time the boys come to davening. What a mashgiach is like the supervisor. Okay, so the supervisor, mashgiach, is sitting by the base of medrash, and he's watching the boys as they come filing in, and one of the guys fancied himself a wit. So he takes a quarter and he drops it in the mashgiach's hand as if he's tipping the doorman. He talks about a big rabbi. So Rabbi looks at him and says, Chaim, go up to your room, pack your bags. You are immediately expelled from the yeshiva for your brazenness and your chutzpah. Okay. Guys have a chutzpah in public, terrible. Okay. About 20 years later, this mashgiach was at a wedding. And this guy walks over, this middle-aged guy walks over to him. He says to him, Rabbi Ploti, do you remember me? With a none too friendly look on his face. He says, Chaim, not only I remember you, I could tell you everything you've done since you left our yeshiva. When you left our yeshiva, you went from yeshiva A, you went then to yeshiva B. And Reuven and Shimon were your chavrusas. And then you got married and you learned in Kollel, and Levi and Yehuda were your chavrusas. And then you got a position in yeshiva C, and today you are an afternoon Rebbe in yeshiva D. His mouth drops, his jaw drops. How can you possibly know that? He says, look, when I expelled you from the yeshiva, I realized that was my responsibility. You were mechutzif, you were brazen, and you needed to be taught a very, very sharp lesson. However, I also felt I have responsibility for your well-being. So I have been following your career over the years, and I have actually been manipulating things behind the scenes. Didn't you ever suspect that Reuven and Shimon were chavrusas that were just a little bit better than you really deserved? Didn't you ever wonder why it was you got accepted to the very high-level kollel, even though you weren't quite at that level? Didn't you wonder how you managed to get that position in the yeshiva where there are 17 other applicants for the job? Because I've been manipulating the things behind the scenes. Behatzlacha. And he left him with his jaw open. Right? So you understand, I'm not talking about being being manipulative. I'm talking about taking the responsibility for a guy. You had to suspend him because that was your responsibility. You had to take stringent measures because that's your responsibility. But just because you did something doesn't mean, okay, cut him loose now. Cut him loose and let him drift around in the wind. That's what the Torah is teaching over here. In general, just so, again, you have to be very careful here that you don't turn into a traveling supervisor. We're talking about you have an obligation to get involved. First, get involved in helping people. Before you get involved in becoming Joe Halacha and correcting people, get involved. It's always good to help people. You know, that's always a good thing. That's certainly a good way for a Jew to get involved. But don't turn yourself into a traveling halachic, traveling halachic lecturer. Okay, to start pointing out people's flaws.